She caught her husband with his mistress in the bathtub, slapped him, kissed her boss, and married him. Hi, my most beautiful, precious, and beloved family. How are you today? This is your Mr. Peter, and I want you to hear this with your heart. I love you. Truly, deeply, endlessly. You're not just a community. You are my strength when I'm weak, my joy in the silence, my family. Each of you is a glowing light in my life, and I thank God for you every single day. A gentle prayer for you with all my love. May love wrap around your heart like a soft blanket. May peace whisper to your soul and healing kiss every hurt you've ever carried. I pray that joy finds you easily, that grace follows your every step, and that you feel how precious you truly are. You are never alone. You are always loved. Please, my beloved family, don't leave this story in the middle. Stay with me. This is for you. Let the love in these words hold your heart for a while. And now something personal I want to share with you. This Mother's Day, my beautiful Binta was so emotional she could barely speak. Our eldest daughter, God bless her sweet heart, gave her a sparkling demand ring, saying, "Mama, you've waited your whole life for someone to honor you like the queen you are. Today I honor you." And our little one, oh, my beautiful family, she brought her mama to tears with a family handprint kit. She pressed her tiny hand into the clay and whispered, "So you'll always remember we're with you, even when we grow up." There wasn't a dry eye in the house. And you, what did you give your mother? Or what did your kids give you? I'd love to know. Share with me. Let's reach 1,000 likes, not for numbers, but to show the world the strength of love, of family, of togetherness. Like, comment, and share this message of love, because together we are unstoppable. Now let's begin, hand in hand, heart to heart, with faith and the warmest embrace ever. Gloria Collins had always been the kind of woman who turned heads when she walked into a room. With her captivating smile, warm eyes that sparkled with intelligence, and a figure that drew appreciative glances, she had never lacked attention from men, but none had affected her the way Riley Gaylord did from the moment they met at her cousin's wedding reception. "Would you care to dance?" The deep, confident voice had come from behind her as she sipped champagne, watching couples twirl across the dance floor. When Gloria turned, she found herself looking into the most mesmerizing blue eyes she'd ever seen. Riley Gaylord stood before her, tall and impossibly handsome, with a smile that made her heart skip several beats. "I'd love to," she'd answered, placing her hand in his extended one, feeling an immediate jolt of electricity at his touch. That first dance had led to many more that night, and by the time the reception ended, Gloria knew she'd met someone special. Riley had asked for her number, called her the very next day, and swept her into a whirlwind romance that left her breathless and completely in love. Their first date had been at a small Italian restaurant tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. Riley had ordered wine without looking at the menu, impressing Gloria with his knowledge as he discussed the subtle notes and flavors with the sommelier. By candlelight, he told her about his dreams of starting his own business, his eyes alight with passion and determination. "You're different from other women I've met," he told her, reaching across the table to take her hand, his thumb caressing her knuckles. "There's something special about you, Gloria Collins. Something that makes me want to be a better man." Words like these, spoken with such apparent sincerity, had melted any reservations she might have had. When he kissed her goodnight outside her apartment door, Gloria knew she was already falling for him. The following weeks had been a blur of romantic gestures. Surprise picnics in the park, midnight drives to watch the stars from a hillside, passionate kisses that left her dizzy with desire. Riley knew exactly how to make her feel cherished, sending flowers to her workplace for no reason other than, "Because you deserve beauty in your day," as his notes would say. It was during their third month of dating that Gloria first brought Riley home to meet her family. The lunch had not gone as she'd hoped. "He's charming," I'll give him that," her mother had said afterward, cornering Gloria in the kitchen while Riley chatted with her sister in the living room. "But there's something about him that doesn't sit right with me." "You're just being overprotective," Gloria had replied, arranging cookies on a plate, unwilling to hear any criticism of the man who had so thoroughly captured her heart. Her mother had sighed deeply, placing a gentle hand on Gloria's arm. "I've heard things, sweetheart. My friend Elaine's daughter dated him briefly last year. He was seeing 2 other women at the same time." Gloria had pulled away, anger flashing in her eyes. "That's just gossip. You don't even know if it's true." "Why would they make something like that up? Please, just be careful. He's extremely good-looking, and men like that—" "Men like what, Mom? Successful, attentive, actually interested in me?" Gloria had snapped, her voice rising. "Men who know exactly what to say to get what they want," her mother had finished quietly. That had been just the beginning. As her relationship with Riley deepened, so did her family's concerns. Her older sister Sarah had pulled her aside at a family barbecue to share similar warnings. "I've heard he has a reputation, Gloria. My friend Nicole works at that marketing firm where he used to be employed. She says he was asked to leave because he was involved with a client's wife." "That's ridiculous," Gloria had defended him fiercely. "He left that job to pursue better opportunities. He told me all about it." Sarah had given her a look filled with concern. "Are you sure you're not just seeing what you want to see? He's gorgeous, sure, but looks aren't everything. Even her youngest sister, Melissa, usually so supportive and carefree, had expressed doubts. There's something about the way he looks at other women when you're not watching, Glo. It makes me uncomfortable." But Gloria had dismissed them all. How could they possibly understand what she and Riley shared? The way he held her at night, whispering promises against her skin. The way he seemed to understand her better than anyone ever had, anticipating her needs and desires. The passion they shared was unlike anything Gloria had ever experienced. Surely that had to mean something profound. When Riley proposed after just 6 months, Gloria had said yes, without hesitation, despite the collective intake of breath from her family. The ring had been stunning, a large diamond that caught the light and drew admiring glances. Later, she would learn he had put it on a credit card he could not afford to pay off. But in that moment, kneeling before her in the restaurant where they'd had their first date, he had seemed perfect. "You're the only woman I want to wake up beside for the rest of my life," he'd vowed, sliding the ring onto her finger. "We're going to build something beautiful together, Gloria." The arguments with her family had intensified after the engagement. Her mother had pleaded with her to at least consider a longer engagement, to really get to know Riley before committing her life to him. "Love isn't enough, sweetheart," she'd said, tears in her eyes. "Marriage is hard work, and you need a partner you can trust completely." "I do trust him," Gloria had insisted. "You just need to give him a chance. You'll see what I see in him eventually." But the tension had only escalated as the wedding approached. During the rehearsal dinner, Gloria had overheard her sisters talking in hushed voices about how Riley had been flirting with one of the bridesmaids. "You're just jealous," Gloria had accused them when confronted. "You can't stand to see me happy because neither of you has found what I have." The hurt in their eyes had haunted her, but not enough to shake her conviction. Riley was her soulmate, her future. Nothing anyone said could change that. On her wedding day, Gloria had been radiant in her white gown, walking down the aisle toward the man of her dreams. Riley had looked so handsome in his tuxedo, his eyes filled with tears as he watched her approach. In that moment, she had felt vindicated. Surely a man who looked at her with such adoration could not be the person her family feared he was. The ceremony had been beautiful, the reception filled with dancing and laughter, though Gloria couldn't help noticing the forced smiles on her family's faces. Even during the father-daughter dance, her dad had seemed distant, his eyes sad as he held her. "It's not too late to change your mind, Pumpkin," he'd whispered, his voice so low only she could hear it. "We'll support you no matter what. Daddy, please," she'd begged, "just be happy for me. I love him." Her father had nodded, kissing her forehead. "I hope he deserves that love." As they had driven away from the reception, tin cans rattling behind their car and "Just Married" written on the back window, Gloria had looked over at her new husband, filled with hope and excitement for their future together. "We proved them all wrong," she'd said, squeezing his hand. "They'll see how happy we're going to be." Riley had smiled that heart-stopping smile of his, bringing her hand to his lips. "It's you and me against the world now, baby. Just the way I like it." If only Gloria had recognized the warning in those words, the subtle implication that he preferred her separated from her support system. But love had blinded her, the passionate kind that burned so bright it obscured all the red flags waving frantically in the background. As they had crossed the threshold of their honeymoon suite that night, Riley sweeping her into his arms with practiced ease, Gloria had been certain she had made the right choice. The night had been filled with passion, his hands and lips exploring her body with a hunger that made her feel desired beyond measure. "I'm going to make you so happy," he'd promised as they lay tangled in the sheets afterward. "You'll never regret choosing me." Gloria had fallen asleep in his arms, content and hopeful, unaware that those words would come to haunt her in the months ahead. She had chosen love against all odds, against all warnings. Only time would reveal the true cost of that choice. Chapter 2. Early Marriage, Bliss Fades. The first 3 months of Gloria and Riley's marriage had been everything she'd dreamed of, and more. Their tiny apartment, though modest compared to the homes of their friends, had become a haven of love and passion. Every night, Riley would pull her into his arms the moment she walked through the door, covering her face with kisses as though they'd been separated for weeks instead of hours. "My beautiful wife," he would murmur against her neck, his hands already working at the buttons of her blouse. "I've missed you all day." Their evenings would often end with them tangled in sheets, breathless and satisfied, whispering plans for their future together. Riley spoke of the successful business he would build, the lavish home they would own, the exotic places they would visit. "We'll have it all, baby," he promised, tracing patterns on her bare skin as they lay in the darkness. "Everything you deserve, and more." Gloria believed every word. How could she not? The way Riley looked at her made her feel like the most precious thing in his world. His passion for her seemed boundless, his love evident in every touch and whispered endearment. The first subtle shift came around their 4th month of marriage. Riley, who had been between jobs when they met, continued to struggle finding work that matched his talents, as he put it. "I'm not going to waste my potential on some entry-level position," he told Gloria one evening as she sorted through bills at their kitchen table. "I have bigger plans than that." "I understand," Gloria replied, though a small frown creased her brow as she calculated their dwindling savings. "But maybe something temporary would help while you're building your contacts, just to ease the financial pressure." Riley's expression had darkened momentarily before he came behind her, massaging her shoulders. "You don't need to worry about money, babe. I've got some prospects lined up. Big things coming soon." His lips trailed down her neck, effectively, ending the conversation as he pulled her toward the bedroom. It became a pattern. Whenever Gloria brought up practical concerns, Riley would distract her with affection or change the subject entirely. And though their passion remained intense, Gloria began noticing how their bank account steadily decreased, while Riley's contributions were non-existent. One morning, as Gloria prepared for work, she noticed Riley taking money from her purse. "Are you doing?" she asked, trying to keep her tone light. Riley didn't even look embarrassed. "Just need a little cash for a meeting today. Potential investor for my business idea." He pocketed the bills without asking permission. "I'll pay you. Back double when it comes through." "Of course," Gloria had said, ignoring the uneasiness settling in her stomach. "Good luck with your meeting." That evening, she'd waited eagerly to hear about the investor. When Riley finally came home after midnight, the smell of alcohol and expensive cologne clinging to him, he barely mentioned the meeting. "It went fine," he said dismissively when she asked. "These things take time, Gloria. Rome wasn't built in a day." She'd nodded, helping him to bed as he stumbled slightly, telling herself that networking often involved drinks. It was all part of the business world, wasn't it? As weeks passed, Riley's late nights became more frequent. The money he took from her purse, or increasingly directly from her bank account, went unexplained. When Gloria gently pressed for details about his business prospects, his responses grew defensive. "Why don't you trust me?" he would demand, blue eyes flashing with hurt that made Gloria immediately backtrack. "I'm working my ass off to build something for us." "I do trust you," she would assure him, pushing down her doubts. "I just want to understand what's happening." But understanding seemed increasingly elusive. Riley, once so communicative about his dreams and plans, began compartmentalizing his life. He'd disappear for hours without explanation, his phone perpetually on silent when he was away. The first time Mrs. Peterson from next door mentioned seeing Riley bringing someone to their apartment while Gloria was at work, she had dismissed it immediately. "It must have been his business partner," Gloria had explained, smiling tightly. "He's been developing a start-up concept." The older woman had given her a look that mingled pity with concern. "Honey, business partners don't usually hold hands." In the elevator, Gloria had laughed it off, making an excuse to end the conversation quickly. But that night, she found herself studying Riley's face as he slept, searching for the man she'd fallen in love with. He was still breathtakingly handsome, his features perfect even in repose, but something had changed in the way she saw him. A seed of doubt had been planted. When she casually mentioned Mrs. Peterson's comment over breakfast, Riley's reaction was immediate and intense. "She's a nosy old bat who needs to mind her own business," he snapped, slamming his coffee mug down, so hard that dark liquid splashed onto the table. "And I can't believe you'd listen to gossip about your own husband." "I didn't say I believed her," Gloria had protested, taken aback by his vehemence. "I just thought you should know what she's saying." Riley's anger had dissipated as quickly as it had flared, his expression softening as he came around the table to kneel beside her chair. "I'm sorry, baby. I didn't mean to snap at you." His hand had cupped her cheek tenderly. "It just hurts that you'd even repeat something like that. You know I only have eyes for you." And then he'd kissed her, with such passion and conviction that Gloria's doubts had melted away. They'd made love right there on the kitchen floor, so intensely that she was almost late for work. As she'd rushed out the door, lips still swollen from his kisses, Gloria had felt foolish for allowing a neighbor's insinuations to cloud her trust in Riley. Yet the pattern continued. More neighbors made comments. Friends exchanged glances when Riley's name came up. Gloria's sister, Sarah, called more frequently, always managing to ask careful questions about how things were going. "We're fine," Gloria would insist, her voice bright with forced cheer. "Riley's working on some exciting opportunities." But behind her reassurances, Gloria's confidence was eroding. Riley now regularly came home well after midnight, sometimes not until dawn. The scent of unfamiliar perfume occasionally lingered on his clothes. When she did their laundry, she sometimes found receipts for expensive dinners on nights he'd claimed to be networking in dive bars. Once, a long strand of blonde hair that wasn't hers caught on one of his sweaters. Still, Gloria clung to her. Belief in their love. The Riley who came home to her, when he did come home, could still make her feel like the only woman in the world. His touch still ignited passion that made her forget all her doubts. In the afterglow of their lovemaking, it was easier to believe his explanations, to accept his excuses, to ignore the growing evidence that the man she'd married wasn't who she thought he was. The turning point came 6 months into their marriage. Gloria had received a promotion at work, and her boss had taken the team out for a celebration dinner. She'd called Riley repeatedly to share her good news, but he hadn't answered. Disappointed but not surprised, she'd enjoyed the evening with her colleagues before taking a taxi home earlier than usual. The apartment had been dark when she arrived, but Riley's keys had been on the hook by the door. Assuming he was asleep, Gloria had quietly made her way to the bedroom, eager to slip in beside him and share her news. But the bed was empty, the sheets undisturbed. Confused, Gloria had checked the living room and kitchen before noticing a thin line of light beneath the bathroom door. She'd approached quietly, hearing the soft sound of water sloshing and what sounded like muffled laughter. Her hand had hesitated on the doorknob. Something inside her had known what she would find. For a moment, she'd considered walking away, preserving the illusion of her marriage for one more night. Instead, she'd taken a deep breath and knocked lightly. "Riley, are you in there?" The sudden silence from within had been all the confirmation she needed. After several long seconds, Riley's voice had come through the door, artificially casual. "Yeah, just taking a bath. Be out in a bit." A woman's quiet giggle had followed his words, poorly suppressed. Gloria had stood frozen, her hand still on the doorknob, her promotion forgotten. In that moment, the edifice of lies she'd built around her marriage had begun to crumble. She hadn't opened the door. Instead, she'd walked back to the living room, sat on the couch in the dark, and waited. 20 minutes later, Riley had emerged. Alone, wearing only a towel around his waist, his hair damp. He'd startled upon seeing her sitting there. "Hey, babe, didn't hear you come in. How was your day?" His tone had been perfectly normal, as though nothing unusual had happened. "Who's in the bathroom, Riley?" Gloria had asked quietly. "What are you talking about? Nobody's there." His face had been a mask of innocence, but his eyes had shifted away from hers. Gloria had stood and walked back to the bathroom, pushing open the door before Riley could stop her. The room was empty, the window open, steam still fogging the mirror. Whoever had been there was gone. When she turned back to Riley, he was already preparing his defense. "You're being paranoid again, Gloria. There was no one here. I think all those stories from your family are getting to you." But Gloria had seen the second wineglass pushed behind the soap dish, the unfamiliar earring on the floor by the tub. She'd said nothing, simply walked past Riley to their bedroom and closed the door, locking it behind her. That night, as she lay alone in their bed, listening to Riley's pleading and eventually his angry demands from the other side of the door, Gloria finally admitted to herself what everyone had tried to tell her. The man she loved existed only in her imagination. The real Riley Gaylord was a stranger, a beautiful shell containing nothing but selfishness and deceit. Yet even as tears soaked her pillow, a small voice inside whispered that perhaps she was overreacting. Perhaps there was an explanation. Perhaps it was just one mistake in a moment of weakness. And when morning came, and Riley greeted her with flowers, apologies, and that breathtaking smile that had first captured her heart, Gloria found herself wanting to believe him one more time. The alternative, admitting that her entire marriage was built on lies, was simply too painful to face. "It will never happen again," he promised, his blue eyes filled with what looked like genuine remorse. "You're the only one I love, Gloria, the only one I want." She nodded, accepting the flowers and his kiss, but something had fundamentally changed. The seed of doubt had grown into something that could no longer be ignored. Gloria returned to work that day with new resolve. She would need to support herself fully now. She could no longer count on Riley for anything, not financially and certainly not emotionally. What she didn't realize was that this decision would lead her to someone who would show her what real love and loyalty truly meant. Chapter 3. New Job, New Beginning. Gloria's decision to focus on her career came with an unexpected opportunity. Her company was expanding, creating a new division that would require dedicated staff working directly under the CEO, Scott Smith. When her manager recommended her for an interview, Gloria had accepted without hesitation, seeing it as a chance to further distance herself from the financial dependence that kept her tethered to her increasingly troubled marriage. The morning of her interview, she'd taken special care with her appearance, selecting a tailored navy suit that projected confidence and professionalism. As she applied a final touch of lipstick, Riley had wandered into the bathroom, watching her with sleepy eyes. "You look nice," he'd commented, leaning against the doorframe. "Hot date?" Gloria had ignored the barb, tucking her lipstick into her purse. "Important interview for the new position I told you about." "Right." More hours away from home, Riley had yawned, seemingly uninterested. Then, as she moved to pass him, his hand had shot out to grasp her wrist. "Don't forget to stop by the ATM. I need some cash for today." Gloria had gently but firmly removed his hand. "I can't, Riley. This is an important opportunity for me, for us. I can't be late." His face had darkened momentarily before he shrugged. Feigning indifference. "Whatever. I'm sure you can spare $20 for your husband." With a sigh, Gloria had opened her wallet and handed him the only cash she had, $40 she'd been saving for lunch that week. "This is it, until payday. Please make it last." Riley had pocketed the money without thanks, already turning away. "Good luck with the interview. Not that you need it. Any man would hire you with that face." The casual sexism had stung, but Gloria had pushed it aside, focusing instead on the opportunity ahead. She couldn't afford to let Riley's behavior distract her today. The Smith Enterprises headquarters occupied the top floors of a gleaming downtown high-rise. As Gloria rode the elevator to the executive level, she took deep, calming breaths, reminding herself of her qualifications and experience. This wasn't just about escaping her financial situation with Riley. It was about building a career she could be proud of. The receptionist had directed her to a spacious waiting area with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Gloria was reviewing her resume one last time when a deep, pleasant voice interrupted her thoughts. "Miss Collins, I'm Scott Smith." Gloria looked up to find herself face-to-face with a man whose presence immediately commanded attention. Tall and broad-shouldered, with intelligent grey eyes and a warm smile, Scott Smith projected an aura of quiet confidence that was worlds apart from Riley's flashy charm. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Smith," she said, rising to shake his extended hand. His grip was firm and brief, professional without being impersonal. "Please call me Scott. I've heard excellent things about your work from your department manager." He gestured toward his office. "Shall we?" The interview had gone remarkably well. Unlike other executives Gloria had encountered, Scott asked thoughtful questions that went beyond her resume, showing genuine interest in her perspective and ideas. By the time they'd finished discussing her potential role in the new division, Gloria felt energized rather than drained. "I have to say, Ms. Collins, may I call you Gloria? Your insights on our client retention challenges are spot on." Scott leaned back in his chair, studying her with evident approval. "I've interviewed 5 candidates this week, and you're the first to identify that particular issue." Gloria smiled, feeling a flush of pride. "Thank you. I've been tracking the patterns in our client feedback reports. They tell quite a story if you know how to listen." Scott nodded slowly. "That's exactly the kind of proactive thinking we need." He stood, extending his hand again. I don't usually make decisions this quickly, but I don't see the point in dragging out the process when the right candidate is sitting in front of me. The position is yours, if you want it." For a moment, Gloria was speechless. The role would mean a significant salary increase, enough that she could potentially save for her own place if things with Riley didn't improve. More importantly, it represented recognition of her abilities, something that had been sorely missing in her personal life. "I would be honored," she finally managed, shaking his hand with genuine enthusiasm. "Excellent. HR will be in touch about the details, but I'd like you to start next Monday if possible." Scott's smile was warm but professional. "I think we'll work well together, Gloria." As she left the building, Gloria felt lighter than she had in months. The opportunity represented more than just professional advancement. It was a lifeline, a reminder that she was capable and valued, regardless of what was happening in her marriage. She'd called Riley immediately, eager to share her good news, but as usual, he hadn't answered. Fighting disappointment, Gloria had treated herself to a small celebration lunch instead, already making mental notes about projects she wanted to tackle in her new role. When she'd arrived home that evening, the apartment was empty. A hastily scrawled note on the counter informed her that Riley was networking and wouldn't be back until late. Gloria had sighed, her momentary excitement dimming. Even on a day that was so important to her, Riley couldn't be bothered to be present. She'd fixed herself a simple dinner and gone to bed early, trying to focus on the positive development in her career rather than the growing emptiness of her marriage. Monday morning had arrived with a sense of nervous anticipation. Gloria had dressed carefully in a new outfit she'd splurged on over the weekend, an investment in her professional future, she'd told herself. Riley, nursing a hangover from yet another late night, had barely glanced up from his coffee as she prepared to leave. "You look expensive," he'd commented, his tone impossible to read. "That's new, isn't it?" "Yes," Gloria had replied simply, choosing not to justify the purchase. "I'll be home around 6. Riley had nodded absently, already reaching for his phone. "I might have a meeting tonight. Don't wait up." Gloria had hesitated at the door, a part of her still hoping for some word of encouragement or pride in her accomplishment. When none came, she'd squared her shoulders and left, determined not to let his indifference affect her first day. Scott had greeted her with the same warm professionalism he'd shown during their interview, personally introducing her to the team. She'd be working with and guiding her through her initial responsibilities. "My door is always open," he told her as he showed her to her new office. A real office, not the cubicle she'd occupied before. "I value open communication and fresh ideas. Never hesitate to share your thoughts, even if they challenge conventional wisdom." The contrast between Scott's respectful, appreciative management style and Riley's self-centered dismissiveness couldn't have been more stark. Throughout that first week, Gloria found herself thriving under Scott's guidance, eagerly tackling projects that stretched her abilities and showcased her talents. Scott was unfailingly professional, never crossing any boundaries or making her feel uncomfortable. Yet Gloria couldn't help noticing small details about him, the way his brow furrowed slightly when he was deep in thought, the rich timbre of his laugh when someone made a clever observation, the considerate way he remembered everyone's coffee preferences during long meetings. It wasn't that she was attracted to him, Gloria told herself firmly. It was simply that working with someone who actually saw her, who valued her contributions and treated her with respect, highlighted everything that was missing from her relationship with Riley. As weeks passed, Gloria settled into her new role with growing confidence. The division was flourishing under Scott's leadership, and Gloria took pride in knowing her work contributed significantly to their success. She began staying later at the office, partly due to the demanding nature of their projects, but also because going home had become an exercise in disappointment. Riley's behavior had deteriorated further. The networking excuses continued, but he'd stopped even trying to make them sound plausible. Money disappeared from their account in large chunks, and when Gloria questioned the expenditures, Riley would turn defensive and hostile. "What, I need permission to spend our money now?" he'd demand, his handsome face twisted with indignation. "You're not my mother, Gloria." "It's not about permission," she would try to explain, keeping her voice level despite her frustration. "It's about communication. We have bills to pay." "Then pay them with your fancy new salary," he'd sneer. "Isn't that why you took the job? So you could lord it over me that you're the one bringing in the money?" These arguments typically ended one of two ways. Either Riley would storm out, not returning until the early hours of the morning, or he would suddenly shift tactics, becoming charming and seductive, using physical intimacy to derail the conversation. And despite everything, Gloria still found herself responding to the latter approach. The physical connection between them remained powerful, a vestige of what had once seemed like love. In those moments, with Riley's hands and lips making her forget all the hurt and disappointment, Gloria could almost believe they could find their way back to what they'd had at the beginning. Almost, but not quite. One evening, as Gloria worked late finalizing a presentation for an important client meeting, Scott had appeared in her doorway, his tie loosened and sleeves rolled up after a long day. "You're still here," he'd observed, leaning against the doorframe. "It's nearly 9. Gloria had looked up, surprised to find they were apparently the only ones left in the office. "This presentation needs to be perfect. The Westridge account could be a game-changer for the division." Scott had nodded, studying her with those perceptive gray eyes. "It will be perfect because you're handling it, but not if you burn yourself out." He'd hesitated before adding, "When was the last time you ate something?" Gloria had realized with a start that she hadn't had anything since a hasty sandwich at noon. "I guess I lost track of time. As your boss, I can't in good conscience let you work through dinner." Scott's smile had been warm but respectful. "There's a decent Thai place that delivers late. Would you allow me to order something? We can review the presentation together while we eat." It had been such a simple, collegial offer that Gloria hadn't hesitated to accept. An hour later, they'd sat in the conference room, containers of pad thai and green curry spread between presentation materials, discussing strategies and client expectations. Scott had offered several insightful suggestions that strengthened her already solid work, his respect for her expertise evident in the way he built upon her ideas rather than overriding them. When they'd finally wrapped up around 10:30, Scott had insisted on calling her a car service. "It's too late for public transportation," he'd said firmly. "The company can cover it." As they'd waited in the lobby for the car to arrive, a comfortable silence had fallen between them. Gloria had found herself studying Scott's profile, noting how different he was from Riley, not just physically, but in his entire demeanor. Where Riley was all flash and surface charm, Scott radiated a quiet, substantial confidence. He didn't need to be the loudest or most attractive man in the room. His presence was compelling in a much more meaningful way. "Thank you," she'd said suddenly. "Not just for dinner, but for seeing me. My capabilities, I mean." Scott had turned to her, his expression thoughtful. "You make it easy. You're exceptionally talented, Gloria. Any company would be fortunate to have you." The simple, genuine compliment had warmed her more than Riley's most passionate declarations ever had. This wasn't flattery designed to achieve something. It was honest appreciation from someone who valued substance over appearance. The car had arrived then, preventing further conversation. As Gloria settled into the back seat, Scott had leaned down slightly. "Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a successful day. I can feel it." Driving home, Gloria had found herself smiling, energized despite the late hour. The presentation would indeed be a success. She was confident in their work and in Scott's leadership. For the first time in months, she felt genuinely optimistic about something in her life. The apartment was dark when she arrived, no sign of Riley. A familiar mixture of relief and disappointment washed over her as she moved through the empty rooms, preparing for bed. As she washed her face, Gloria studied her reflection in the bathroom mirror, noting the spark in her eyes that had been missing for too long. "You are more than this marriage," she told her reflection quietly. "You are more than his wife." The realization settled over her with surprising weight. Somewhere along the way, Gloria had lost herself in trying to make her relationship with Riley work. She'd accepted his behavior, made excuses for his failures, diminished her own needs, all for a man who couldn't even be bothered to ask about her day. As she slipped between the sheets, Gloria made a decision. She would give her marriage one more chance, one honest conversation about what needed to change. And if Riley couldn't or wouldn't meet her halfway, she would have to seriously consider whether this was how she wanted to spend the rest of her life. What Gloria didn't realize as she drifted off to sleep was that soon that decision would be made for her in a way she never could have anticipated. Chapter 4. First Proposal, The Office Late Night. 3 months into her new position, Gloria had established herself as an indispensable part of Scott's team. Her innovative approaches to client relations had already resulted in 2 major account acquisitions, and her ability to anticipate problems before they arose had saved countless hours of damage control. Scott had taken notice. Gloria often caught him watching her during meetings, his grey eyes thoughtful as she presented her ideas. Unlike the appraising looks she sometimes received from other men, the kind that made her feel like an object rather than a person, Scott's gaze held appreciation. For her mind, her capabilities, her essence, it was refreshing. And increasingly it was confusing, because despite her best efforts to maintain strict professionalism, Gloria couldn't deny the quiet flutter in her chest whenever Scott stopped by her office, or the way her day brightened when he offered one of his rare, genuine smiles in response to something she said. "This is ridiculous," she chided herself one evening as she caught herself fixing her hair before a meeting in Scott's office. "You're married, even if it is to a lying, cheating." She cut herself off with a sigh. No matter how troubled her marriage had become, Gloria wasn't the type of woman to develop feelings for another man. She respected herself and Scott too much for that, yet the contrast between the 2 men in her life grew starker with each passing day. While Riley continued his pattern of late nights, unexplained absences, and financial irresponsibility, Scott demonstrated consistent integrity, thoughtfulness, and respect. Where Riley took and took without giving back, Scott continually looked for ways to recognize others' contributions and lift them up. It was a Tuesday evening when everything changed. The office had emptied hours earlier, but Gloria remained at her desk, finalizing a presentation for an important meeting the following morning. So absorbed was she in her work that she didn't notice Scott standing in her doorway until he gently cleared his throat. "Still burning the midnight oil?" he asked, his voice warm with concern rather than criticism. Gloria looked up, startled. "Oh, I didn't realize you were still here." She glanced at her watch and was surprised to see it was nearly 9. "I wanted to make sure everything was perfect for tomorrow." Scott nodded, entering her office and taking a seat in the chair across from her desk. "The preview you sent me earlier looked excellent. I have complete confidence in your work, Gloria." There it was again, that simple, sincere appreciation that made her feel simultaneously valued and seen. "Thank you, that means a lot." A comfortable silence settled between them as Scott leaned back in the chair, loosening his tie slightly. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of her office, the city lights twinkled against the darkening sky, creating an oddly intimate atmosphere. "You know," Scott said after a moment, his tone conversational, When Johnson recommended you for this position, he said you were not only brilliant, but also the hardest worker he'd ever managed. I thought he was exaggerating. A small smile played at the corners of his mouth. Now I think he might have been understating the case. Gloria felt a flush of pleasure at the compliment. I've always believed that anything worth doing is worth doing well. A philosophy I share. Scott's eyes held hers steadily. It's rare to find someone so aligned with my own work ethic and vision. There was something in his voice that made Gloria's pulse quicken slightly. The atmosphere in the office seemed to shift, becoming charged with an energy she couldn't quite name. Scott stood suddenly, moving to the window to gaze out at the cityscape. With his back to her, his voice came softer, almost hesitant. Gloria, may I speak frankly with you for a moment? Of course, she replied, setting aside her work and giving him her full attention. He turned back to face her, his expression uncharacteristically vulnerable. I've come to value our professional relationship immensely. Your contributions to this division have exceeded all expectations. He paused, seeming to search for the right words. But I find myself in a difficult position, because my appreciation for you has evolved beyond the purely professional. Gloria felt her breath catch. Surely he wasn't saying what she thought he was saying. I find myself thinking about you outside of work hours, Scott continued, his steady voice betraying just a hint of nervousness. Looking forward to our meetings, creating reasons to stop by your office. He exhaled slowly. In short, I've developed feelings for you, Gloria, feelings that go beyond admiration for a talented colleague. The confession hung in the air between them, weighty and unexpected. Gloria sat perfectly still, caught between shock and a complicated surge of emotions she wasn't prepared to examine. I know this is inappropriate, Scott said quickly, reading her silence as discomfort. You're married, and I'm your supervisor. I've wrestled with whether to say anything at all, but... He ran a hand through his dark hair, a rare gesture of uncertainty from a man usually so composed. I believe in honesty, and it felt dishonest to continue pretending my feelings were purely professional. Gloria found her voice at last. Scott, I don't know what to say. She stood, needing to move, to create some distance as she gathered her thoughts. I'm very flattered, truly, and I respect you enormously, both professionally and personally. But, he supplied gently, but as you said, I'm married. The words felt hollow even as she spoke them, given the state of her marriage. Yet they were true, and Gloria had made vows she still took seriously, despite Riley's apparent disregard for them. Scott nodded, accepting her response with grace. I understand completely, and I want to assure you that this changes nothing about our working relationship. Your position and the respect I have for your work remain exactly the same. The sincerity in his eyes confirmed his words. This was not a man who would punish her for rejecting his advances or make her work life uncomfortable. It was yet another way Scott Smith differed from so many other men she'd encountered. Thank you for understanding, Gloria said softly, and for your honesty. I should be the one thanking you for your graciousness in handling my inappropriate confession. Scott managed a small, self-deprecating smile. I hope you can forgive the momentary lapse in judgment. There's nothing to forgive, Gloria assured him, and she meant it. Though his timing and position made the revelation complicated, there was something undeniably moving about having earned the genuine affection of a man like Scott Smith, a man who saw and valued her for far more than her physical appearance. Scott moved toward the door, clearly wanting to give her space. I should let you finish your work. Again, I apologize for the interruption and for any discomfort I've caused. Scott, Gloria called as he reached the doorway. He paused, turning back to her with questioning eyes. Thank you for respecting my marriage, even when... She stopped herself, unwilling to speak aloud the thought that had nearly escaped. Even when my husband doesn't. Scott seemed to understand what remained unsaid. With a gentle nod, he left her office, closing the door softly behind him. Gloria sank back into her chair, her presentation forgotten as her mind whirled with conflicting emotions. On one level, she was flattered, even moved, by Scott's confession. His genuine appreciation for her mind and character stood in stark contrast to the increasingly callous treatment she received from Riley. Yet despite everything, she had meant what she said about her marriage. Troubled as it was, she had made a commitment, and Gloria wasn't someone who walked away without giving everything she had to make things work. As she gathered her things to head home, a small, insistent voice in the back of her mind whispered, an uncomfortable question. If she was so committed to her vows, why did Scott's confession make her feel not only flustered, but also hopeful? Gloria pushed the thought away firmly. What she needed now was to focus on repairing her marriage, not entertaining fantasies about her boss, no matter how honorable and attractive he might be. When she arrived home, she found Riley sprawled on the couch, watching television with a nearly empty bottle of expensive whiskey on the coffee table beside him. He barely glanced up as she entered. "You're late," he commented, his tone accusatory despite his own frequent absences. "I had work to finish," Gloria replied, hanging up. "Her coat! Important presentation tomorrow." Riley snorted, taking another swig from his glass. All work and no play makes Gloria a dull girl. She bit back a retort, too emotionally drained from her interaction with Scott to engage in another pointless argument with Riley. Instead, she headed for the bathroom, craving a hot shower to wash away the day's tension. As she stood under the steaming water, Gloria found herself comparing the two men again. Scott, who respected her boundaries and valued her mind, Riley, who took her for granted and seemed increasingly resentful of her success. The contrast couldn't have been more stark, and for the first time, Gloria allowed herself to wonder if she had made a terrible mistake in choosing Riley, if perhaps the passionate love she had once felt for him had blinded her to fundamental flaws that no amount of commitment could overcome. It was a troubling thought, one that followed her into uneasy dreams, where grey eyes watched her with quiet longing, while blue ones glittered with cold disdain. Chapter 5. Second Proposal. The Company Retreat. The weeks following Scott's confession brought a curious mix of awkwardness and deepened respect between them. True to his word, Scott maintained absolute professionalism, never again alluding to his feelings or putting Gloria in an uncomfortable position. If anything, he seemed determined to prove that his personal sentiments wouldn't interfere with their working relationship. For her part, Gloria threw herself into her work with renewed vigor, partly to distract herself from her increasingly troubled home life, and partly because the projects themselves were genuinely engaging. The division was thriving under their combined leadership, and the satisfaction of building something successful provided a welcome contrast to the slow collapse of her marriage. Not that she had given up on Riley entirely. Gloria had made several attempts to address the growing distance between them, suggesting everything from date nights to couples counseling. Riley responded to each overture with initial enthusiasm that quickly faded to indifference or outright resentment. "Why are we going to waste money on some therapist who'll just tell me everything is my fault?" he demanded when she'd broached the subject of counseling. "If you weren't so busy trying to be Scott Smith's star employee, maybe you'd have time to be a proper wife." The irony of this accusation, coming from a man who was rarely home and contributed nothing to their household, wasn't lost on Gloria. Yet she persisted, desperately wanting to believe there was still something worth saving in their relationship. It was in this conflicted state of mind that Gloria found herself preparing for the division's annual strategy retreat, a 3-day event at a mountain resort where the team would evaluate progress and plan for the coming year. The prospect of spending extended time with Scott outside the office brought a mixture of anticipation and anxiety that she tried her best to ignore. The night before her departure, Gloria had carefully packed her suitcase with professional attire, suitable for both meetings and the more casual team-building activities scheduled throughout the retreat. Riley lounged on their bed, watching her with thinly veiled suspicion. 3 days in the mountains with your precious boss, he commented, his tone acidic. How convenient, Gloria continued, folding a blouse, refusing to rise to the bait. It's a company retreat, Riley. The entire division will be there. Right. He rolled his eyes. And I'm sure St. Scott will be the perfect gentleman. She paused, turning to face him fully. What exactly are you implying? Riley sat up, his handsome face twisting into an ugly smirk. Come on, Gloria. The man's had a thing for you since day one. Everyone can see it. That's ridiculous, she replied, though her quickened pulse betrayed her. Had Scott's feelings been that obvious to others? We have a strictly professional relationship, if you say so. Riley's tone made it clear he didn't believe her. Just don't expect me to sit around waiting while you're up there playing mountain games with your boss. The implication was clear and rich with hypocrisy given Riley's own behavior. Gloria closed her suitcase with more force than necessary. That's ironic coming from you. At least I've been honest about where I'm going and who I'll be with, which is more than I can say for you most nights. Riley's eyes narrowed dangerously. What's that supposed to mean? You know exactly what it means. Gloria was too tired, too frustrated to pull her punches any longer. The late nights, the unexplained expenses, the perfume on your clothes that isn't mine. Do you think I'm blind, Riley? He stood abruptly, moving toward her with a menacing energy that made Gloria take an instinctive step back. So now I'm the bad guy because I have a social life, because I'm not content to be chained to a desk like you and your precious Scott. Having a social life doesn't involve lying to your spouse or emptying our joint account for business opportunities that never materialize. Gloria shot back, refusing to be intimidated despite the nervous flutter in her stomach. Riley's hand shot out, grabbing her wrist with enough pressure to make her wince. Careful, Gloria. You're starting to sound like you don't trust your husband. Look directly into his blue eyes, once so captivating and now cold with barely suppressed anger. Give me a reason to trust you, Riley. Just one. For a moment, she thought he might lash out further. Instead, he released her wrist abruptly and stepped back, his handsome face transforming with disturbing speed into a mask of wounded innocence. I can't believe you'd accuse me of cheating, he said, his voice suddenly soft and hurt. After everything we've been through together, I thought our love meant more to you than that. It was a tactic Gloria had seen before. This rapid shift from aggression to victimhood, designed to make her feel guilty for questioning him. In the past, it had worked. Tonight, with the memory of his fingers digging into her wrist still fresh, she wasn't buying it. I'm going to bed, she said flatly. I have an early start tomorrow. As she turned away, Riley's voice followed her, sharp with resentment. Fine, go to your mountain retreat. Just don't be surprised if I'm not sitting here waiting when you... Get back. Gloria paused in the doorway of their bedroom, suddenly weary beyond words. Is that a threat or a promise? She asked quietly, not bothering to look back at his reaction before closing the door behind her. She slept in the guest room that night, her dreams troubled by conflicting images. Riley, as he had been when they first met, charming and seemingly devoted. Riley, as he was now, manipulative and cruel, and Scott, steady and honorable, looking at her with those thoughtful grey eyes that saw far too much. The next morning, Gloria left while Riley was still sleeping, or pretending to be. The drive to the mountain resort provided a welcome opportunity to clear her head, the winding roads and breathtaking scenery gradually easing the tension that had knotted her shoulders since the previous night's confrontation. By the time she arrived at the rustic Lux Lodge, nestled among towering pines, Gloria had managed to push her marital troubles to the back of her mind, determined to focus on the professional opportunity the retreat represented. Scott greeted the team in the lodge's grand lobby, his typically formal attire replaced by well-fitted jeans and a cashmere sweater that softened his appearance without diminishing his natural authority. His eyes found Gloria's as she entered, lighting with a warm professionalism that made her simultaneously relieved and oddly disappointed. "Glad you made it safely," he said, approaching her with a colleague in tow. "The mountain roads can be tricky this time of year." "The drive was actually quite peaceful," Gloria replied, matching his professional tone. Scott nodded, seeming to understand all she wasn't saying. "Allow me to introduce you to Marcus Chen, our new marketing strategist. Marcus, this is Gloria Collins, the brilliant mind behind our client retention program." The introduction set the tone for the day. Busy, focused, and scrupulously professional, Scott maintained a careful distance, including Gloria in every discussion, but never singling her out in a way that might fuel speculation. His behavior was beyond reproach, exactly what she would have wanted under the circumstances. So why did she feel a twinge of disappointment? The first day of the retreat passed in a blur of presentations and strategy sessions, culminating in a team dinner in the lodge's private dining room. Gloria contributed actively to discussions, her insights earning nods of approval from Scott and her colleagues alike. If she occasionally caught Scott watching her with a thoughtfulness that went beyond professional appreciation, she pretended not to notice. The second day followed a similar pattern until late afternoon, when the scheduled activities concluded earlier than expected. With a few hours of free time before dinner, most of the team dispersed to enjoy the resort's amenities, the spa, the indoor pool, or simply the comfort of their rooms. Gloria opted for a solitary walk along one of the shorter hiking trails, needing fresh air and exercise after a day of intensive discussions. The autumn afternoon was perfect for hiking. The crisp mountain air filled with the scent of pine and the beginning hints of winter. She had been walking for perhaps 20 minutes when a familiar voice called her name. Turning, she saw Scott, approaching on the trail behind her, his long strides quickly closing the distance between them. "I hope I'm not intruding," he said as he drew near. "I saw you heading out and thought I might join you, if that's all right. It's been too long since I've enjoyed these trails." Gloria hesitated only briefly before nodding. "Of course, the trail's open to everyone." They fell into step beside each other, a comfortable silence stretching between them as they made their way deeper into the forest. The trail curved gently upward, eventually opening onto a small clearing with a breathtaking view of the valley below. "This is one of my favorite spots," Scott said, coming to stand beside her at the edge of the lookout. "No matter how many times I see it, the view never fails to put things in perspective." Gloria nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. Against the backdrop of the ancient mountains and sprawling wilderness, human concerns seemed small and temporary, even the turmoil of her marriage. "You seem preoccupied today," Scott observed quietly, "more than the retreat would account for." She glanced at him, surprised by his perception. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who's been paying attention." His tone was gentle, free of any implication that might make her uncomfortable. "Is everything all right, Gloria?" The genuine concern in his voice nearly undid her carefully maintained composure. How long had it been since Riley had asked her that question and actually cared about the answer? "It's nothing," she said automatically, then shook her head, amending her response. Actually, that's not true. It's complicated. Personal. Scott nodded, not pressing further. I understand. Just know that if you ever need someone to listen, I'm here as a friend, he added carefully. The word friend hung between them, both an offer and a boundary. Gloria felt a rush of gratitude for his understanding. Thank you, she said simply. Then, surprising herself, she added, things at home aren't good. Scott was silent for a moment, his eyes on the distant mountains. I suspected as much, he finally replied. You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. But suddenly, Gloria found that she did want to talk about it, needed to, perhaps. The burden of pretending everything was fine had become exhausting. My husband and I, she began, then stopped, unsure how to continue. How did one summarize a marriage that had begun with such promise, only to deteriorate into suspicion and resentment? You don't seem happy, Scott said quietly. I've noticed it for some time now. Gloria looked at him, struck by the simple truth of his observation. No, she admitted, I'm not. May I ask you something, Gloria? When she nodded, Scott turned to face her fully, his expression serious. Why do you stay with someone who clearly doesn't appreciate what he has in you? The directness of the question caught her off guard. It's not that simple, she began, but even to her own ears the response sounded weak. Isn't it? Scott's voice was gentle but insistent. You're an extraordinary woman, Gloria. Intelligent, capable, kind. You deserve someone who sees that, who treasures it. There was no mistaking his meaning now. Despite his promise to maintain professional boundaries, Scott was once again revealing his feelings for her, though in a more measured way than during his first confession. I made vows, Gloria said, her voice barely above a whisper, for better or worse. And it seems you've had far more of the worse lately, Scott observed. There comes a point when staying out of obligation becomes self-destruction. His words struck uncomfortably close to thoughts Gloria had been trying to suppress for months. I still believe in giving everything a chance to work, she said, though with less conviction than she might have once had. Scott studied her face for a long moment before nodding slowly. That's one of the many things I admire about you, your commitment, your integrity. He took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. But I hope you know that if you ever decide you've given enough chances, there are other possibilities waiting for you, better ones. The implication was clear. Scott was offering himself as one of those possibilities, not demanding, not pressuring, but simply making his continued interest known. Gloria felt a flutter of something dangerously close to yearning. Here was a man who saw her clearly, who valued her mind and spirit, who offered a vision of partnership that seemed worlds away from the troubled relationship she currently had. Scott, she began, but he gently raised a hand to stop her. You don't need to say anything, he assured her. I shouldn't have spoken so directly, especially given our professional relationship. He paused, looking out at the mountains again. I just wanted you to know that you have options, that you deserve happiness, Gloria nodded, unable to trust her voice. The simple kindness of his words, free from manipulation or expectation, moved her more deeply than any of Riley's passionate declarations ever had. They stood together in silence for several minutes, watching as the setting sun painted the valley in hues of gold and amber. When Scott finally suggested they head back before darkness fell, Gloria felt as though something fundamental had shifted between them. Not crossed a line exactly, but acknowledged a possibility that both thrilled and terrified her. As they walked back to the lodge, Scott maintained a respectful distance, their conversation turning to safer topics, work projects, industry trends, the beauty of the landscape around them. Yet Gloria couldn't help sensing an undercurrent of meaning in their simplest exchanges. a connection that transcended words. And for the first time in months, she allowed herself to imagine a different future than the one she had resigned herself to, a future where she was valued, respected, and truly loved. Whether that future involved Scott specifically, she wasn't ready to consider. But the mere fact that she could envision happiness beyond her marriage felt like a significant step. What Gloria didn't realize was that this newfound clarity would soon be tested in ways she couldn't possibly have anticipated. Chapter 6. Third Proposal. The Honest Question. The aftermath of the company retreat brought subtle but significant changes to Gloria's life. At work, she and Scott maintained their professional dynamic, though there was a new undercurrent of understanding between them. At home, the distance between Gloria and Riley grew wider with each passing day, their conversations reduced to terse exchanges about bills and schedules. What little physical intimacy remained in their marriage had evaporated. Riley spent most nights out, returning in the early hours smelling of alcohol and perfume. When Gloria attempted to discuss their relationship, Riley would either lash out with accusations about her and Scott or adopt an injured manner, portraying himself as the victim of her career ambitions. "You've changed," he accused one evening after she declined his sudden, drunken advances. "You used to be fun, spontaneous. Now it's all work, work, work." Gloria had simply stared at him, wondering how this handsome stranger had once been the center of her world. "People change, Riley. Sometimes they grow up." He'd sneered at that, reaching for the whiskey bottle on the nightstand. "If growing up means becoming a frigid workaholic, I'll pass." The comment had stung, but not as deeply as it once might have. Gloria was beginning to see Riley's barbs for what they were. Desperate attempts to maintain control over her, to make her doubt herself just enough to stay under his influence. It wasn't working anymore. One rainy Tuesday evening, 2 months after the retreat, Gloria found herself working late again. A major client had unexpectedly moved up their deadline, requiring last-minute adjustments to their proposal. The office had emptied hours ago, leaving Gloria alone with her spreadsheets and presentation slides. Or so she thought, until a knock at her open door revealed Scott standing there, his tie loosened and sleeves rolled up, a paper bag in his hand. "I saw your light still on," he said. "Thought you might need sustenance." He held up the bag. The deli on the corner was still open. "I hope you like pastrami." Gloria smiled, suddenly aware of the hollow feeling in her stomach. "I love pastrami, actually." "Thank you." Scott entered, placing the bag on her desk and pulling up a chair. As he unpacked the sandwiches, Gloria found herself studying him with new eyes. In the month since his confessions, Scott had been nothing but respectful, never pressuring her or making her uncomfortable. Yet his quiet presence in her life had become a solid anchor amidst the turbulence of her failing marriage. They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes before Scott gestured to her computer screen. "The Westridge proposal. I thought that wasn't due until next week." Gloria sighed, setting down her sandwich. "They moved up the timeline. Apparently their board meets earlier than expected." Scott nodded, understanding the implications. "Can I help? 2 minds might make quicker work of it." The offer was tempting, but Gloria shook her head. "I appreciate it, but I've got it under control. Just need to refine a few sections." "I've never doubted your ability to handle anything that comes your way," Scott said with a small smile. "But the offer stands." As their impromptu dinner concluded, Scott began gathering the wrappers and napkins. "I should let you get back to it," he said, though he made no immediate move to leave. Gloria watched him, aware of the comfortable silence that had fallen between them, a stark contrast to the tense atmosphere that pervaded her home. "Thank you again for dinner. It was a nice surprise." Scott met her eyes, his expression open and unguarded. "I've been trying to keep my distance," he admitted quietly. to respect your space and your decisions. I know, Gloria acknowledged. I've appreciated that. But the truth is, Scott continued, his voice steady despite the vulnerability in his eyes, seeing you every day, working so closely with you, it hasn't made my feelings any less intense. If anything, my admiration for you has only grown. Gloria felt her pulse quicken. Scott, Please, he interrupted gently, let me finish. He paused, then asked with unexpected directness, Is it because I'm ugly? The question was so surprising, so contrary to everything she knew about Scott's confidence, that Gloria could only stare at him in confusion. What? Scott's smile was self-deprecating, but not without a hint of genuine curiosity. Every other woman in this office would jump at the chance to have dinner with me, let alone anything more. You're the only one who consistently keeps me at arm's length. He leaned forward slightly. So I have to wonder, is it my appearance that doesn't appeal to you? The absurdity of the question nearly made Gloria laugh, but the sincere vulnerability behind it stopped her. Scott, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. She hesitated, then decided honesty was called for. You're an incredibly attractive man by any standard. And he was. Though not conventionally handsome in the same way as Riley, whose looks were almost model-perfect, Scott possessed a compelling masculinity that emanated from his confidence, intelligence, and the genuine kindness in his grey eyes. Then why? He asked simply. Why do you keep choosing a man who clearly makes you unhappy over someone who would move mountains to see you smile? The directness of the question struck Gloria like a physical blow. For months, she had been dancing around this very issue, making excuses for Riley's behavior while keeping Scott's genuine affection at bay. It's not that simple, she began, then stopped herself. Actually, maybe it is that simple. I made vows. Scott, for better or worse, if I walk away at the first sign of trouble, the first sign? Scott's voice was incredulous but not unkind. Gloria, with all due respect, this is hardly the first sign of trouble. From everything you've said, and everything you haven't said, but I can see in your eyes, your marriage has been troubled for a long time. He was right, of course. The trouble had begun almost immediately after their wedding, with Riley's lack of responsibility, his constant taking without giving, his gradual emotional abandonment, and eventually his blatant infidelity. You deserve better, Scott continued quietly. You deserve someone who sees your worth, who cherishes your brilliance instead of being threatened by it. Someone who would never dream of making you doubt yourself. His words pierced the armor Gloria had built. Around her heart, for a moment, she allowed herself to imagine what it might be like to be loved by a man like Scott, respected, supported, cherished for exactly who she was. I can't, she whispered, though with less conviction than before. Not yet. I need to resolve things with Riley one way or another before I can even think about. She trailed off, unable to articulate the possibilities that Scott's presence in her life represented. Scott nodded, accepting her boundary without argument. I understand. And I'll wait, Gloria. Not because I expect anything from you, but because someone like you is worth waiting for. The simple sincerity of his declaration moved her more than any grand gesture could have. Here was a man who respected her enough to accept her decisions, even when they didn't align with his desires, a sharp contrast to Riley's manipulations and demands. Thank you, she said softly, for understanding, for not pushing. Scott stood, collecting the remains of their dinner. I should go. Let you finish your work. At the door he paused, turning back to her with a gentle smile. Just remember, Gloria, you're not trapped. You always have choices, and whatever you decide, I'll respect it. With that, he was gone, leaving Gloria alone with her thoughts and the half-finished proposal on her screen. She tried to return to work, but Scott's words kept echoing in her mind. "You're not trapped. You always have choices." The realization was simultaneously terrifying and liberating. For months, years really, she'd been allowing her vows to become chains, binding her to a man who had broken his own promises countless times over. What did loyalty mean when it was entirely one-sided? What value did commitment have when it became an excuse for accepting mistreatment? As Gloria finally packed up her things to head home, she felt a new resolve forming within her. She would have one final, honest conversation with Riley. She would lay all her cards on the table, her knowledge of his infidelity, her exhaustion with his irresponsibility, her growing awareness that what they had wasn't love, but a toxic imitation of it. And depending on his response, she would finally make a choice, not between Scott and Riley, but between the life of quiet desperation she'd been accepting and the possibility of something better. What Gloria didn't realize as she drove home through the rain-slicked streets was that fate was about to make that choice for her in a way she could never have anticipated. Chapter 7. The Stormy Night. Thunder rumbled ominously as Gloria drove home, her mind still turning over the conversation with Scott. Raindrops hammered against her windshield with increasing ferocity. By the time she pulled into the parking garage of her apartment building, the storm had escalated into a full-blown tempest. Inside her apartment, Gloria found only darkness and silence. No sign of Riley, which was hardly surprising these days. After a simple dinner eaten alone, she settled on the couch with a glass of wine, watching the storm rage outside. News alerts pinged on her phone, warning of flash floods and advising against unnecessary travel. A violent thunderclap shook the building, and moments later, the lights flickered out completely, plunging the apartment into darkness, broken only by occasional lightning flashes. Gloria was contemplating what to do next when her work phone rang. Scott's name flashed on the screen. "Hello?" she answered, surprised to hear from him again. "Gloria," his voice was all business. "I'm sorry to call so late, but we have a situation with the Westridge proposal. Their CFO just called me directly. We need to completely revamp the strategy section before their board meeting tomorrow." Gloria felt a surge of adrenaline. "I'm on my way back to the office." "In this storm?" Scott sounded concerned. "The weather warnings are serious." "The proposal has to be ready," Gloria insisted. "It's too important." Scott hesitated before agreeing. "I'll meet you there. But please, be careful driving." As she was gathering her keys, Gloria paused, feeling obligated to let Riley know. She dialed his number unsurprised when it went to voicemail. "Riley, it's me. There's an emergency at work. With this storm, I might not make it back tonight, so don't wait up." What she didn't know was that in Scott's office, 20 blocks away, Scott had overheard every word. She had accidentally called him rather than Riley, distracted in the dark apartment. "Gloria, it's Scott. I think you called me by mistake." There was a moment of startled silence. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I was trying to call Riley." "No need to apologize," Scott assured her. "But listen, I've been monitoring the weather reports. I don't think either of us should risk driving in these conditions. But the proposal can be handled remotely," Scott finished. "We both have VPN access. We can collaborate via video call." The genuine concern in his voice warmed her. How long had it been since Riley had shown similar care for her well-being? "All right," she agreed. "Remote collaboration it is." For the next 3 hours, they worked seamlessly together, revamping the strategy in response to the competitor's move. It was nearly 1 a.m. when they finally completed the revisions. "That should do it," Scott said, stifling a yawn. "I'll review it again in the morning, but I think we've addressed everything." Agreed, Gloria replied, rubbing her tired eyes. Thank you for suggesting the remote option. The storm has only gotten worse. Another crack of thunder emphasized her point. Scott's face showed concern. Is your power still out? Yes, Gloria confirmed. They're estimating at least morning before it's restored. No heat, then, Scott observed, noting the sweater she'd wrapped around herself. Gloria shrugged. I'll manage with extra blankets, Scott frowned. My building has a generator, full power, heat, everything. He held up a hand as Gloria began to respond. I'm not suggesting anything inappropriate. I have a guest room that's entirely at your disposal. Gloria hesitated, aware of the potential complications. Given our conversation earlier, it might not be the best idea. I understand your concern, but I'm offering as your colleague and friend. You have my word that I will respect all boundaries. Gloria believed him. Before she could respond, her phone beeped with a severe weather alert. Flash flooding had made several major roads impassable. It seems the decision might be made for us, Scott said. It's not safe to be on the roads now. Gloria's practical side won out. Thank you for the offer. I accept, strictly as colleagues, of course. The journey to Scott's building was treacherous, with Gloria navigating flooded intersections with white-knuckled concentration. Scott was waiting in the lobby when she arrived, dressed casually in jeans and a grey sweater. You made it, he said, relief evident. I was starting to worry. Scott's apartment was tastefully furnished, with floor-to-ceiling windows, offering what would normally be a spectacular view of the city. As he made tea, Gloria noticed there were no photos of romantic partners, just family pictures and group shots with friends. I didn't know you were married before, Gloria said when Scott mentioned his ex-wife. Scott nodded. It ended 7 years ago. Caroline was focused on her career as a photojournalist, always traveling. I wanted stability, eventually a family. I'm sorry, Gloria said, genuinely moved by this personal revelation. Scott shrugged. It taught me what I value in a relationship. Communication, shared goals, mutual respect. He met her eyes briefly. The willingness to put each other first when it matters. The unspoken comparison to her own marriage hung in the air. They spent the next hour in comfortable conversation about books and travel, carefully avoiding any mention of their earlier, more personal discussion. When Gloria yawned, unable to hide her exhaustion, Scott immediately showed her to the guest room. Thank you, truly, Gloria said at the door, not just for the shelter, but for being someone I can count on. Scott's smile was warm, but restrained. Always, Gloria. Sleep well. In the guest room, Gloria curled under the plush comforter, listening to the storm still raging outside. The contrast between the chaos of the weather and the peaceful sanctuary of Scott's home wasn't lost on her. It paralleled the turmoil of her marriage versus the steady, respectful connection she'd found with Scott. As sleep began to claim her, Gloria wondered if the storm in her life with Riley was something to be weathered or something to be escaped. What if, like tonight, there was a warmer, safer place waiting if she only had the courage to make the journey? Little did she know that the next day would force her to answer that question once and for all. Chapter 8. The Shocking Discovery. The storm had subsided by morning, leaving behind a city recovering from nature's fury. Gloria awoke in Scott's guest room feeling more rested than she had in months. After a quick breakfast, they headed to the office together for the Westridge presentation. The meeting was a resounding success. Their late-night revisions had secured the account. We couldn't have done this without you, Scott told Gloria quietly amid the team's celebration, his grey eyes warm with genuine appreciation. The professional triumph filled Gloria with a sense of accomplishment that had been sorely missing from her personal life. As the workday wound down, she found herself reluctant to return to her apartment, to the cold reality of her failing marriage. I should head home, she said to Scott. "The power should be back on by now." Scott nodded. "If you'd like company for the drive, I'd be happy to follow you. Some areas might still be flooded." Gloria hesitated, aware of the growing intimacy between them. "That's kind of you, but I think I'll be fine." As she drove home through streets still showing evidence of the storm's fury, Gloria's mind turned to Riley. Had he even noticed her absence? The answer was waiting for her in the form of her apartment, exactly as she had left it, with no sign that Riley had returned at all during the night. The power was still out, though emergency crews were visible on the street. Gloria was considering what to do about dinner when her phone rang. Riley's name flashed on the screen, surprising her. He rarely called. "Babe, finally." Riley's tone was unusually cheerful. "I've been trying the apartment phone all day. Just got the message about the power outage in your area." "It's been out since last night," Gloria confirmed, wondering at his sudden interest. "Well, I'm heading home now. Just wrapped up some promising meetings." The background noise suggested he was in a bar rather than any kind of business setting. "Thought maybe we could order in, open some wine, make a night of it." The unexpected overture caught Gloria off guard. "That sounds nice," she managed, confusion evident in her voice. "But the power's still out. No delivery places are operating in our area yet." "No problem. I'll pick up something on the way." Candles, wine, the works. Could be romantic, right? Gloria's suspicion deepened. This sudden attentiveness was completely out of character. "Sure. I guess I'll see you soon then." She was still pondering these questions when, to her surprise, her doorbell rang less than 30 minutes later. Riley never rang the bell. He had keys, and he was rarely so prompt. Opening the door, Gloria found Scott standing there, a grocery bag in hand. "Scott, what are you doing here?" He held up the bag with a slightly embarrassed smile. "I drove by and noticed your building was still dark. Thought you might need some supplies." The thoughtful gesture touched Gloria deeply. "That's incredibly kind of you. Please, come in." Scott stepped inside, his flashlight providing much-needed illumination. The crews outside said power should be restored within a couple of hours. "Let me make you some coffee as a thank you," Gloria offered. "The stove is gas, so I can at least manage that." As they talked in the kitchen, Gloria heard the unmistakable sound of a key in the lock. Her eyes widened in sudden panic. Riley was early, far earlier than expected given his usual tardiness. "Babe, got us some amazing Thai food and that wine. You—" Riley stopped short as he entered the kitchen, taking in the scene before him, Gloria and Scott standing together, mugs of coffee in hand. His handsome face darkened instantly. "What the hell is this?" Gloria stepped forward quickly. "Riley, this is Scott Smith, my boss. Scott, this is my husband, Riley." Scott, ever professional, extended his hand. "Pleasure to meet you, Riley. I was just dropping off some emergency supplies since the power's still out." Riley ignored the outstretched hand, his blue eyes icy. "How thoughtful," he said, voice dripping with sarcasm. "And here I thought bosses usually delegated that kind of errand." The naked hostility in his tone was shocking. Gloria felt a flush of embarrassment and anger. "Scott was being kind, Riley." Scott, recognizing the volatile situation, excused himself quickly. At the door, he spoke quietly to Gloria. "Are you going to be all right?" The concern in his eyes made Gloria's throat tighten. "I'll be fine. Thank you again for the supplies." When she returned to the kitchen, Riley was pouring himself a generous glass of wine, movements sharp with barely contained anger. "Well, isn't he the perfect gentleman?" he sneered. "Bringing supplies, checking up on you. Does he wipe your ass, too?" "That's enough, Riley," Gloria said firmly. "Scott was being considerate, which is more than I can say for you most of the time." Riley laughed harshly. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my wife's boss has a thing for her, and maybe—" his eyes narrowed accusingly— "she has a thing for him, too." "You don't know what you're talking about, don't I?" Riley leaned against the counter. "You didn't come home last night. Where exactly did you stay, Gloria?" "I stayed at a colleague's place," she said carefully. "The roads were flooded, and it wasn't safe to drive." "A colleague," Riley repeated skeptically. "Would this colleague happen to be your devoted boss?" Gloria hesitated, trapped between a lie and a truth that would be misinterpreted. "Yes," she admitted finally, "but it wasn't what you're implying. Scott has a guest room. Everything was completely professional." Riley's face darkened further. "Professional. Right, because men like Scott Smith always have purely professional intentions when they invite beautiful women to spend the night." The hypocrisy was staggering. "That's rich coming from you, Riley," Gloria shot back. "How many nights have you spent not coming home at all? How many business meetings have you had that smelled like perfume and alcohol?" "So that's what this is, payback." Riley's voice rose. "You're sleeping with your boss to get back at me for some imagined affairs." "I am not sleeping with Scott." Gloria's frustration boiled over. "And your affairs aren't imagined, Riley. They're painfully, obviously real. Do you think I'm blind?" For a moment, genuine surprise flashed across Riley's features. Then his expression hardened again. "You don't know anything," he muttered, turning away. "I'm going to take a bath. Maybe you should call your boss back, since you two were having such a cozy time." He stalked off toward the bathroom, leaving Gloria trembling with anger and hurt. For several minutes, she stood perfectly still, trying to calm her racing heart. She heard the water running in the bathroom, the familiar sounds of Riley preparing his bath, one of his few consistent habits, using hot soaks to de-stress after what he claimed were difficult business meetings. Tonight, though, something drove her toward the bathroom, a need to continue the confrontation, to finally force Riley to acknowledge the truth of what their marriage had become. As she approached the bathroom door, Gloria heard something that made her stop short. A soft, feminine laugh, definitely not Riley's, coming from inside. A woman's voice murmured something indistinct, followed by Riley's deeper tones and another quiet laugh. Gloria stood frozen, her mind struggling to process what she was hearing. Riley wasn't alone in there. He had brought someone into their home, into their bathroom, while she stood just down the hall. The audacity, the sheer disrespect of it, was breathtaking. Before she could think better of it, Gloria pushed open the bathroom door. The scene that greeted her would be burned into her memory forever. Riley reclined in their bathtub, surrounded by bubbles from the expensive bath products Gloria had bought, a glass of wine in his hand. And nestled against his chest, her dark skin gleaming wet in the candlelight, was a stunningly beautiful woman Gloria had never seen before. For one eternal moment, no one moved. Riley's eyes widened in shock as they met Gloria's, while the woman, apparently not expecting an interruption, seemed more confused than embarrassed. Then reality crashed in like a physical blow. Gloria felt her knees give way beneath her, collapsing to the tile floor as the full impact of Riley's betrayal hit her. Tears sprang to her eyes, hot and unstoppable, streaming down her face as she stared at the man she had once believed loved her. "Gloria!" Riley scrambled to sit upright, sloshing water over the side of the tub. The woman moved away from him slightly, reaching for a towel, uncertainty written across her beautiful features. "This isn't," he began, then apparently thought better of whatever lie he had been about to offer. Instead, his expression shifted, handsome features rearranging themselves into a mask of righteous indignation. "Well, well," he said, voice hardening as he gestured toward the hallway. "Did your precious boss leave already, or is he waiting in our bedroom?" Gloria stared at him through her tears, disbelief mingling with her pain. Even now, caught in the most blatant infidelity imaginable, Riley was trying to turn this around. On her, "How dare you," she whispered, her voice breaking. "How dare you bring her to our home?" The woman in the tub looked increasingly uncomfortable, glancing between Gloria and Riley with growing alarm. "Riley, you said you were separated," she said quietly. "You told me your wife moved out weeks ago." A fresh wave of pain washed over Gloria at this revelation. Not only had Riley cheated, he'd been systematically lying to this woman as well, creating an entire fictional narrative to facilitate his betrayal. "Shut up, Gloria," he snapped, ignoring his companion's words entirely. "Don't act so shocked and innocent. We both know you've been screwing your boss. That's why you didn't come home last night, isn't it? Too busy spreading your legs for Scott Smith to care about your marriage." Each word was like a slap, the vicious accusations all the more painful for how wildly, completely untrue they were. Gloria had remained faithful despite Riley's neglect, despite the growing connection she felt with Scott, despite everything. She stared at her husband, this cruel, selfish stranger wearing Riley's handsome face, and something inside her finally, irrevocably broke. With surprising steadiness, Gloria rose to her feet, tears still streaming down her face, but a new clarity in her eyes. Riley continued his tirade, his words growing more vicious, more accusatory, with each passing moment. But she barely heard him. Years of excuses, justifications, and desperate hope fell away, leaving only the painful truth. The man she had loved, had fought for, had defended against her family's concerns, had never really existed. "This is over," she said, her quiet words somehow cutting through Riley's angry monologue. "We're over." Riley's face darkened again, the mask of contrition slipping to reveal the anger beneath. "This is about him, isn't it? Your boss. You think he wants you for anything more than a quick fuck? You think a man like that would ever see you as anything but a temporary amusement?" The woman in the tub began gathering her things, clearly wanting no part of this ugly confrontation. "I should go," she murmured, reaching for her clothes. But Gloria barely noticed her. All her attention was focused on Riley, on the hateful words spewing from the mouth that had once whispered love to her. Something hot and fierce rose within her chest. Not just anger, but a profound, liberating fury at all the months and years she had wasted on this man. Before she fully realized what she was doing, Gloria had crossed the small bathroom in 2 quick strides. Her hand connected with Riley's cheek in a slap, so forceful his head snapped to the side, water sloshing violently in the tub. "You never deserved me," she said, her voice low and vibrating with emotion. "And I never deserved this." Then, in a move that surprised even herself, Gloria turned on her heel and strode purposefully out of the bathroom, down the hall, and straight to the front door. She could hear Riley shouting behind her, scrambling out of the tub, but she didn't slow her pace. Scott was just getting into his car when Gloria burst out of the building's front entrance. He turned at the sound of her approach, concern immediately washing over his features as he took in her tear-streaked face. "Gloria? What happened? Are you—" She didn't let him finish. In 3 quick steps, she was standing before him, and before either of them could speak, Gloria did what she had been denying herself for months. She reached up, pulled Scott's face down to hers, and kissed him full on the lips. The kiss was everything Riley's hadn't been in a long, long time. Tender yet passionate, a connection that went beyond the physical to something deeper and more meaningful. Scott froze for a half-second in surprise before his arms came around her, steadying her trembling body against his. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Scott studied her face with careful eyes. "Gloria," he said softly. "What happened in there?" Fresh tears threatened, but Gloria held them back. "I finally saw the truth," she replied, her voice stronger than she had expected. "And now I'm choosing something better." Behind them, the lights in the apartment building suddenly blazed to life as power was restored to the neighborhood. It felt like a sign. Illumination after darkness, clarity after confusion. "Will you take me away from here?" Gloria asked, looking up at Scott with new determination. "I don't think I can be in that apartment tonight." Scott nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. "I'll take you anywhere you want to go." As they drove away, Gloria didn't look back at the building where Riley was undoubtedly still raging. That chapter of her life was over. What came next would be of her own choosing, on her own terms, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, that thought filled her not with fear, but with hope. Chapter 9. New Beginnings. The drive to Scott's apartment passed in a blur of streetlights and silence. Gloria sat in the passenger seat, her mind still reeling from the events of the evening, the confrontation, the devastating discovery, the liberating fury that had propelled her out of her marriage and into Scott's arms. Now, as the adrenaline began to fade, the full weight of what had happened settled on her shoulders. Scott respected her silence, occasionally glancing over with concern, but not pressing her to speak. When they arrived at his building, he led her inside with a gentle hand at the small of her back, his touch providing an anchor amid the emotional chaos. Inside his apartment, Scott moved with quiet efficiency, brewing tea and setting out a plate of simple food that Gloria hadn't realized she needed until she saw it. He placed a soft throw blanket around her shoulders as she sat on his sofa, still slightly dazed. "You don't have to talk about it," he said finally, taking a seat across from her rather than beside her, giving her space without abandoning her to her thoughts. "But I'm here when you're ready." Gloria wrapped her hands around the warm mug of tea, drawing strength from its heat. "I found Riley in our bathtub with another woman," she said, her voice steadier than she expected. "He had the audacity to bring her to our home, knowing I might walk in at any moment." Scott's expression darkened, but he kept his voice calm. "I'm so sorry, Gloria." "The worst part wasn't even finding them together," she continued, the words spilling out now that she had started. "It was his reaction. Instead of apologizing or showing any remorse, he immediately accused me of cheating with you." A bitter laugh escaped her. "Even caught red-handed, he tried to make it my fault." "That's classic manipulation," Scott observed, quietly. "Deflecting blame, reversing victim and offender," Gloria nodded, taking a sip of tea. "It's been his pattern for so long, I just couldn't see it clearly until tonight." She looked up, meeting Scott's concerned gaze. "I'm sorry about what happened outside. The kiss, I shouldn't have put you in that position." Scott's expression softened. "You have nothing to apologize for, Gloria. Nothing at all." "It was impulsive," she admitted. In that moment, I needed to claim something for myself, to take control back." "I understand," Scott said, and she believed he truly did. "What happens next is entirely up to you. No pressure, no expectations." The simple statement, so different from the emotional manipulation Riley had subjected her to for years, brought tears to Gloria's eyes again. "I need to file for divorce," she said, the words both painful and liberating. "As soon as possible." Scott nodded. "I know an excellent family law attorney, high ethical standards, very discreet. I can put you in touch with her whenever you're ready." "Thank you," Gloria whispered. Then, hesitantly, "Scott, about us, whatever this is between us, I need time. I can't jump from one relationship into another. It wouldn't be fair to either of us." "I'm not going anywhere, Gloria," Scott replied with gentle certainty. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here, as a friend, as a colleague, as whatever you need me to be." The promise, offered without expectation of return, soothed something raw and aching in Gloria's heart. For the first time since discovering Riley's betrayal, she felt the tightness in her chest begin to ease. "Would it be all right if I stayed in your guest room tonight?" she asked. "I don't think I can face going back to that apartment." "Of course," Scott assured her. "Stay as long as you need." That night, alone in Scott's guest room, Gloria cried, Not for the marriage she had lost, but for the years she had wasted trying to save something that had been broken from the start. When the tears finally subsided, she felt hollowed out, but strangely peaceful, as if the grief had cleared space for something new to grow. The following week passed in a whirlwind of practical matters. With Scott's support, Gloria consulted the attorney he had recommended, a sharp-minded woman named Rebecca Chen, who laid out her options with compassionate clarity. The evidence of Riley's infidelity, combined with financial records showing how he had systematically drained their joint accounts, made for a straightforward case. "It won't be pleasant," Rebecca warned during their initial consultation, "but it should be relatively quick. The sooner we file, the sooner you can begin rebuilding your life." Gloria signed the necessary paperwork that same day. When Riley was served with divorce papers at the bar where he apparently spent most afternoons, his reaction was predictably explosive. He showed up at Gloria's office demanding to see her, only to be calmly but firmly escorted out by security. "You'll regret this," he shouted as the elevator doors closed on him. "He'll never love you like I did." The scene, while embarrassing, only reinforced Gloria's certainty that she had made the right decision. Riley's idea of love had always been about possession, not partnership, about what Gloria could give him, not what they could build together. Temporarily unable to return to the apartment she had shared with Riley, Gloria stayed in Scott's guest room for several days before finding a small furnished sublet that would tide her over until the divorce was finalized. Scott helped her move the few personal belongings she had retrieved from her apartment, careful to maintain appropriate boundaries despite the growing closeness between them. At work, Scott ensured their professional relationship remained above reproach, never giving anyone reason to question Gloria's position or achievements. They continued to collaborate effectively, their natural synergy unaffected by the personal connection developing alongside it. 2 weeks after filing for divorce, Gloria felt steady enough to reach out to her family. The conversation with her mother was one she had dreaded and postponed, expecting "I told you so" remarks that would only deepen her sense of failure. Instead, when Gloria finally called and explained the situation, her mother's response caught her completely off guard. "Oh, sweetheart," Margaret Collins said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that alone. I should have been there for you instead of pushing you away because of my feelings about Riley." "You tried to warn me," Gloria reminded her. "You saw what I couldn't or wouldn't see." "That doesn't matter now," her mother insisted. "What matters is that you're free of him, and that you know you can always come home. Your sisters and I, we've missed you terribly." The conversation ended with plans for Gloria to visit the following weekend. A reunion she approached with equal parts nervousness and anticipation. When she arrived at her childhood home, the reception she received overwhelmed her with its warmth. Her mother enveloped her in a fierce hug that seemed to last forever, while her sisters Sarah and Melissa hovered anxiously nearby, waiting their turn. "We owe you an apology," Sarah said once they were all settled in the family living room, cups of tea in hand. "We should have found a better way to express our concerns about Riley. We pushed you right into his arms." "No," Gloria shook her head firmly. "I made my choice. I was so convinced I knew better that what Riley and I had was special enough to overcome any obstacle. Love can be blinding," her mother observed gently, "especially when it's wrapped up in a package as pretty as Riley Gaylord." The comment startled a laugh from Gloria, perhaps the first genuine laugh she'd managed since that awful night. "His looks were quite the distraction," she admitted, "but I've learned that true beauty isn't about perfect features or charm. It's about how someone treats you, how they make you feel about yourself." Melissa leaned forward, curiosity overtaking her usual reserve. "Speaking of how people treat you, Mom mentioned there might be someone new, someone who helped you through all this." Gloria felt a flush rise to her cheeks. Scott has been incredibly supportive, but it's not like that, at least not yet. Tell us about him, her mother encouraged, no judgment in her voice, only genuine interest. For the next hour, Gloria found herself describing Scott, his integrity, his quiet strength, his respect for her mind and abilities. The more she spoke, the more she realized how fundamentally different he was from Riley, how their connection was built on mutual respect rather than passion alone. "He sounds wonderful," her mother said when Gloria finally ran out of words. "But I'm proud of you for taking time for yourself first. That shows real wisdom, sweetheart." The weekend with her family proved healing in ways Gloria hadn't anticipated. Their unconditional support, free from recrimination or judgment, helped restore her belief in herself, in her ability to recognize genuine love when she encountered it. When she returned to the city Sunday evening, Gloria felt lighter than she had in months, possibly years. The weight of her failed marriage still ached, but it no longer threatened to crush her. She was moving forward, one careful step at a time. The divorce proceedings progressed with surprising speed. Riley, for all his initial bluster, seemed to lose interest in fighting once he realized Gloria wouldn't be swayed by his manipulations. When financial disclosures revealed the extent of his mismanagement of their joint resources and his substantial gambling debts, he became eager to settle quickly and quietly. 6 weeks after filing, Gloria sat in Rebecca Chen's office, signing the final paperwork that would legally end her marriage to Riley Gaylord. "Congratulations," Rebecca said, as Gloria completed the last signature. "It's not often I get to say that about a divorce, but in your case, I think it's warranted." Gloria smiled, running her finger over her name, her maiden name which she had chosen to reclaim. "It feels strange, sad, but also right." "Endings usually are a mixture of both," Rebecca observed. "The important thing is what comes next." What came next for Gloria was a period of intentional reconstruction. She found a permanent apartment, smaller than the one she had shared with Riley, but with large windows that filled the space with natural light. She reconnected with friends she had neglected during her marriage, rebuilt her relationship with her family, and focused on her career with renewed energy and purpose. Throughout it all, Scott remained a steady presence, supportive without being possessive, interested without being intrusive. They developed a friendship that deepened gradually, built on shared values and mutual respect, rather than the intoxicating but unstable passion she had mistaken for love with Riley. 3 months after her divorce was finalized, Gloria arrived at work to find a small, elegantly wrapped package on her desk. Inside was a delicate silver pendant in the shape of a phoenix, accompanied by a simple note in Scott's distinctive handwriting. "Dinner tonight? As friends, or perhaps something more? Entirely your choice." Gloria held the pendant in her palm, feeling its weight and admiring the craftsmanship. The phoenix, a symbol of rebirth and renewal after destruction. It couldn't have been more fitting. She found Scott in his office, reviewing quarterly projections with his usual focused attention. He looked up as she knocked lightly on his open door, his expression warming when he saw her standing there. "Do you have a moment?" she asked. Scott set aside his work immediately. "For you, always." Gloria entered, closing the door behind her, something she rarely did during their professional interactions. The gesture wasn't lost on Scott, whose posture straightened slightly, his eyes attentive. "I received your gift," she said, holding up the pendant. "It's beautiful and perfect." "I'm glad you like it," he replied, his tone careful. "I saw it and thought of you immediately, of your strength and resilience these past months." Gloria moved closer to his desk, her heart beating a little faster, but her mind completely clear. "I'd love to have dinner tonight," she said. "And I think I'm ready for it to be something more." The smile that broke across Scott's face was like sunrise after the longest night, warm, bright, and full of promise. "I was hoping you might say that," he admitted. "I've been patient because I believe what's growing between us deserves the proper foundation. I didn't want to rush you." "I appreciate that more than I can say," Gloria told him sincerely. "My relationship with Riley was all passion and impulse from the beginning. There was never any solid ground underneath it." She met Scott's gaze directly. "What I feel for you is different, deeper, steadier, built on something real." Scott rose from his chair, coming around the desk to stand before her. With gentle fingers, he took the phoenix pendant from her hand. "May I?" Gloria nodded, turning, so he could fasten the chain around her neck. His fingers were warm against her skin as he secured the clasp, lingering just a moment longer than necessary, a promise of intimacy to come, but offered without pressure or expectation. When she turned back to face him, Scott's grey eyes held a depth of emotion that made her breath catch. "Whatever happens between us, Gloria, I want you to know that I see you, truly see you. Your intelligence, your strength, your compassion. I admired you long before I fell in love with you." The word love hung in the air between them, honest and unadorned. Gloria reached up to touch the phoenix pendant now resting against her collarbone. "I think I'm falling in love with you too," she admitted quietly. "It's terrifying after everything that happened with Riley, but also right. Like coming home to a place I've been searching for all along." Scott's smile deepened. "Then we'll figure it out together, one step at a time." He glanced at his watch reluctantly. "Although right now we both have meetings to attend." Gloria nodded. Professional responsibility temporarily overriding personal desire. "Dinner at 8, she suggested, already looking forward to the evening ahead. "I'll pick you up at 7:30, Scott confirmed, his eyes lingering on her face with quiet adoration. "I know just the place." As they both returned to their work duties, Gloria felt a sense of rightness settle over her. The path ahead wasn't certain, life never was, but for the first time in years, she was walking toward her future with open eyes and an open heart, ready to embrace whatever came next. Their dinner that night marked the official beginning of their relationship, though in many ways it felt like a natural continuation of the connection that had been building between them for months. Unlike the whirlwind passion of her romance with Riley, Gloria's relationship with Scott deepened gradually, building on a foundation of mutual respect and genuine friendship. 3 months into their relationship, Scott invited Gloria to accompany him to his family's lakeside home for a long weekend. The setting was idyllic, a rustic, elegant cabin nestled among towering pines, with a large deck overlooking crystal-clear waters. There, surrounded by nature's beauty and away from the pressures of work and city life, they crossed the final threshold of physical intimacy. Their first night together was everything Gloria's encounters with Riley had never been. Tender, yet passionate, focused on mutual pleasure rather than selfish gratification. Scott's touch was reverent, his grey eyes never leaving hers as they explored each other with increasing ardor. When they finally came together fully, Gloria felt tears spring to her eyes at the profound rightness of their connection, physical, emotional, and spiritual, all at once. "Are you all right?" Scott had whispered, concern creasing his brow as he noticed her tears. "More than all right," Gloria assured him, drawing his face down for a deep, soul-searing kiss. "I just never knew it could feel like this, like coming home." In the warm darkness of the lakeside cabin, wrapped in Scott's strong arms, and listening to the gentle rhythm of his heartbeat beneath her ear, Gloria finally understood what true love meant. It wasn't the desperate, clinging passion she had mistaken for love with Riley, but this steady, powerful current that supported rather than consumed, that lifted rather than drowned. The rest of the weekend passed in a haze of newfound intimacy. Lazy, Mornings in bed, afternoons swims in the lake, evenings spent talking by the fire, sharing dreams and fears with equal honesty. By the time they returned to the city, something fundamental had shifted between them. They were no longer just dating. They had become partners in the deepest sense of the word. As summer turned to fall, Gloria received word that Riley had left the city, reportedly moving to the West Coast with his latest girlfriend. The news brought unexpected relief, a final severing of her past that left her free to embrace her future without lingering shadows. At Thanksgiving, Gloria brought Scott to her family's home, nervous about how they would receive him, despite their previous acceptance of her new relationship. She needn't have worried. Within hours, Scott had charmed her mother with his genuine interest in her prized garden, impressed her father with his knowledge of classic films, and won over both her sisters with his obvious adoration of Gloria. "He looks at you like you're the answer to every question he's ever had," Sarah observed quietly as they washed dishes after dinner. "Nothing at all like the way Riley looked at you." "How did Riley look at me?" Gloria asked, curious about her sister's perception. Sarah considered for a moment. "Like you were a beautiful possession he'd acquired, something to show off, not someone to share his life with." She glanced toward the living room, where Scott was engaged in animated conversation with their father. "Scott looks at you like he sees your soul and loves every part of it." The simple observation crystallized what Gloria had been feeling for months. With Riley, she had always been performing somehow, trying to be the perfect wife, to meet his ever-shifting expectations, to justify his treatment of her. With Scott, she could simply be herself, strengths, flaws, and all. On Christmas Eve, after a quiet dinner at his apartment, Scott led Gloria to the balcony, where a small pine tree had been decorated with tiny white lights. At its base sat a small velvet box. "I'm not rushing you," he said softly, as Gloria's eyes widened in understanding. "If you're not ready, I'll wait. A month, a year, however long you need. But I wanted you to know that whenever you are ready, this is waiting for you." Gloria knelt beside the tree, her hands trembling slightly as she lifted the box. Inside nestled a stunning yet understated ring, a round diamond flanked by smaller sapphires set in platinum. It was elegant, timeless, and utterly perfect. I'm ready," she whispered, looking up at Scott with absolute certainty. "I've never been more ready for anything in my life." Scott knelt beside her, taking the ring from its box with reverent fingers. "Gloria Collins," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion shining in his eyes, "you've taught me what true partnership means, to walk beside someone, supporting them without trying to control them, loving them for exactly who they are." He held the ring poised at the tip of her finger. "Will you marry me? Will you build a life with me based on trust, respect, and a love that grows stronger every day?" "Yes," Gloria answered without hesitation, joy bubbling up through her chest and spilling out in a radiant smile. "Yes, I will marry you, Scott Smith, with all my heart, yes." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, just like everything between them, and gathered her into his arms for a kiss that promised a lifetime of happiness, Gloria felt the final piece of her heart heal. The phoenix pendant Scott had given her months earlier rested against her skin, a constant reminder that from the ashes of her past, something beautiful and enduring had risen. 2 weeks later, Gloria stood in her mother's living room, sharing the news of her engagement with her family. Their joy and wholehearted approval washed over her like a blessing. Healing wounds she hadn't even realized still lingered from their initial rejection of Riley. "We were wrong before," her mother admitted, embracing her with tears in her eyes. "We pushed too hard against your choice instead of supporting you through it. But this time," she clasped Scott's hand warmly, "this time, we're all on the same page. You've found a good man, Gloria, a man worthy of you." As Gloria leaned into Scott's solid presence beside her, surrounded by the love of her family, she silently thanked the universe for bringing her through fire to this moment of perfect peace. The journey had been painful, but the destination, this place of honest love and genuine connection, was worth every tear, every heartache, every moment of darkness that had preceded it. The path to true happiness, she reflected, rarely ran straight. But with the right companion by your side, even the most difficult journey could lead to a destination more beautiful than you ever dared imagine. Chapter 10. The Wedding Day. The spring morning dawned perfect and clear, as if nature itself approved of the union about to take place. Sunlight streamed through the windows of the bridal suite, casting a golden glow over Gloria as she stood before the mirror, hardly recognizing the radiant woman who looked back at her. Her wedding gown was a masterpiece of elegance, ivory silk that flowed like water over her curves, with delicate lace accents that caught the light. Her dark hair was arranged in loose waves, adorned with tiny pearl pins that matched the strand at her throat. Her mother's pearls, worn on her own wedding day. "You look absolutely breathtaking," her mother said, voice thick with emotion as she adjusted the veil. Like a princess from a fairy tale, Gloria smiled, her heart overflowing. A fairy tale with a complicated middle but a very happy ending. Sarah and Melissa bustled around her, making final adjustments to her dress and bouquet. A lush arrangement of cream roses, blue hydrangeas, and fragrant jasmine. A soft knock announced her father's arrival, handsome in his formal suit and barely containing his emotions. "My little girl," he whispered, eyes shining, "you are a vision." The ceremony would take place in the manor's gardens, where rows of white chairs had been arranged on either side of a stone path leading to a flower-adorned arbor. As Gloria and her father waited in the garden entrance, she caught her first glimpse of Scott standing beneath the arbor, tall and handsome in his tailored suit. The string quartet began playing Pachelbel's canon, signaling the start of the procession. Sarah and Melissa moved gracefully down the aisle in simple blue gowns, followed by Scott's niece as flower girl, scattering rose petals with solemn concentration. When the music shifted to the wedding march, the assembled guests rose. For a breathless moment, the world seemed to narrow to just two people, Gloria and Scott, their gazes locking across the distance that separated them. The naked adoration on Scott's face as he watched her approach brought tears to Gloria's eyes. Unlike Riley, who had regarded her as a trophy, Scott looked at her with a reverence that spoke of partnership, of cherishing not just her beauty, but her entirety, mind, heart, and soul. Each step down the aisle felt like a step away from her, painful past, and toward a future bright with promise. When they reached the arbor, her father placed her hand in Scott's with a gentle squeeze of blessing. "You are spectacular," Scott whispered, as he took both her hands in his. "More beautiful than I ever imagined." The officiant began with words about love's journey, how true love wasn't always found on the first attempt, how sometimes the heart needed to learn difficult lessons before recognizing its perfect match. When the time came for their vows, Scott spoke first, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "Gloria, from the moment you walked into my office, you changed my life. Your intelligence, your grace, your quiet strength, all of it captivated me. I promise to love you completely and constantly through whatever life brings our way. I promise to be your steadfast partner, your passionate lover, your trusted confidant, and your most loyal friend. I promise to respect your independence while offering my unwavering support." He paused, thumbs caressing the backs of her hands. "Most of all, I promise to see you, truly see you, every day of our life together, and to make sure you never doubt, for a single moment, how deeply, completely, and eternally you are loved. Tears slipped down Gloria's cheeks as she absorbed the beauty of his promises. When it was her turn, she took a deep breath. "Scott, you came into my life when I had forgotten what real love looked like, what it felt like to be genuinely valued and respected. You showed me that love doesn't diminish who you are, it magnifies your best self. You taught me that partnership doesn't mean losing yourself. It means finding someone who walks beside you, supporting your dreams while sharing their own." Her voice grew stronger. "I promise to love you with an open heart and clear eyes, never taking for granted the gift of your devotion. I promise to be your equal partner in all things, to face life's joys and sorrows with you hand in hand." She reached up to touch his face gently. "And I promise that you will never doubt, not for one moment, that you are the best decision I have ever made." The exchange of rings followed, simple platinum bands symbolizing their unbroken commitment. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Scott's kiss was both tender and passionate, a perfect balance of reverence and desire that made Gloria's heart race. "Mrs. Smith," Scott whispered against her lips, his eyes dancing with joy. Courtesy. Reception was everything they had envisioned. Elegant without being ostentatious, joyful without being chaotic. They danced their first dance to "At Last" by Etta James, the lyrics about finding true love after a long search holding special significance. "I never thought I could be this happy," Gloria confessed as Scott held her close. "It almost doesn't feel real." "It's real," he assured her, pressing a kiss to her temple, "and it's just the beginning of our story." When Gloria's father raised his glass for the toast, his voice resonated with emotion and wisdom. "To Scott and Gloria," he began, "love isn't always found on the first try. Sometimes we need to learn hard lessons before we recognize the real thing when it comes along. May your marriage be blessed with passion that never fades, friendship that deepens with every passing year, and a love that only grows stronger through whatever life brings your way." The guests echoed the toast enthusiastically, glasses clinking as Scott pulled Gloria close for another kiss. The celebration continued with dancing and laughter, though there had been a somber moment earlier when someone mentioned Riley. The news of his death 3 months ago in a drunk driving accident had shocked everyone, even Gloria. Despite everything he had put her through, she hadn't wished him such a tragic end. Scott had held her hand tightly when they heard, understanding her complicated emotions without judgment. "Are you thinking about him?" Scott asked gently as they shared a quiet moment away from the reception. "Just briefly," Gloria admitted. "It's strange to think he's gone. But mostly I'm thinking about how fortunate I am to have found you, someone who truly sees me and loves me for exactly who I am." Scott's eyes softened. "Life takes unexpected turns, some tragic, some beautiful." He brushed his thumb across her cheek. "Today is about celebrating the beautiful turn that brought us together." As the evening continued, Gloria let those thoughts drift away. Scott led her away from the crowd to a quiet corner of the garden where a stone bench sat beneath climbing roses. The night air was perfumed with their scent. "I have something for you," Scott said, reaching into his jacket to produce a small velvet box. Inside was a stunning bracelet of sapphires and diamonds that complemented her engagement ring perfectly. "Scott, it's beautiful," she breathed as he fastened it around her wrist. "Not nearly as beautiful as my wife," he replied, his eyes darkening with desire. "Do you have any idea how much I love you, Gloria Smith? How completely you've captured my heart?" "Show me," she whispered, lifting her face for his kiss. Scott's lips claimed hers with newfound possession, still tender, but with an intensity that sent heat spiraling through her body. His hand cradled her neck as the kiss deepened. "I can't wait to have you all to myself," he murmured against her ear, his voice rough with wanting. "To worship every inch of you properly." Gloria shivered at the promise in his words. Then perhaps we should think about making our exit soon. The remainder of the reception passed in a blur. When it came time for their departure, Gloria changed into an elegant ivory silk dress that clung to her curves in a way that made Scott's eyes darken appreciatively. The moment the hotel room door closed behind them, Scott gathered Gloria into his arms, kissing her with all the passion he had been restraining throughout the day. Finally, he breathed against her neck. Do you have any idea how difficult it's been to keep my hands off you all day? Gloria laughed softly, her fingers already working at the buttons of his shirt. About as difficult as it's been for me to wait to do this, she replied, pushing the shirt from his shoulders. You are breathtakingly handsome, Scott Smith. And all mine, all yours, he agreed, reaching to slowly lower the zipper of her dress, for as long as we both shall live. The dress pooled at her feet, revealing delicate lace lingerie that left Scott momentarily speechless. You are a vision, he whispered reverently, his hands warm against her waist as he drew her closer. My beautiful wife. What followed was a passionate consummation of their vows, Scott's lovemaking both tender and fierce as he claimed Gloria as his wife in the most primal way possible. Their bodies moved together in perfect harmony, each touch, each kiss, each whispered endearment, building toward a crescendo of pleasure that left them both trembling. Afterward, as they lay tangled in the sheets, Gloria's head on Scott's chest and his fingers tracing patterns along her back, a profound sense of peace settled over them. I never knew it could be like this, Gloria murmured. That love could feel so completely. Right, so safe, yet so exciting. Scott's arms tightened around her. This is just the beginning, my love. We have a lifetime of discoveries ahead of us. He tilted her face up to his. I promise you this. Every day of our marriage I will strive to be worthy of the trust you've placed in me. Gloria traced the beloved contours of his face, and I promise to never take for granted the gift of your love. She replied softly. To remember always that what we've found together is precious beyond measure. As Scott drew her up for another soul-deep kiss that rekindled the embers of desire, Gloria surrendered herself completely to the joy of loving and being loved by this extraordinary man. The painful lessons of her past had led her here, to this moment of perfect unity with her true soulmate. They had both finally found what they truly deserved, a love built on trust, respect, and a passion that would never fade, a love that would sustain them through whatever challenges and triumphs lay ahead in their journey together.